One of my favorite directors is Steven Spielberg, who has an incredible ability at giving many of his films the appropriate level of magic. And when he does a more serious film about an historical event, the audience is able to stop and listen. And now I'm going to count down my favorite scenes from his movies. It was difficult narrowing this list down to 10, although I did not include more than one scene from the same film. These are individual moments I feel best capture what makes Spielberg an extraordinary filmmaker. The landing on Omaha Beach in Saving Private Ryan. Starting the film off with a bang, Spielberg wanted to put the audience right in the thick of this battle. Everything about the sequence is dirty, grimy, and full of blood, capturing what the American soldiers were faced with when they arrived at Normandy. While certainly a gory sequence, none of it feels gratuitous. Spielberg is able to cut between the various participants as bullets come flying towards them and they attempt to survive. It's also an example of how well Spielberg works with his collaborators, as the contributions of cinematographer Janusz Kaminski, editor Michael Kahn, sound designer Gary Rydstrom, and the stunt performers played a massive role in putting the sequence together. What makes it work is that it's not an action scene in the traditional sense, but rather a depiction of the dangers of battle and what these young soldiers had to face during the Second World War. The first dinosaur sighting in Jurassic Park. I debated with myself whether to include this scene or the arrival of the T-Rex. One captures a feeling of wonder, while the other shows the terrifying might of the dinosaur. Both are excellent sequences, but I ultimately went with wonder. This scene works for a number of reasons. First, there's the build-up to when we see these dinosaurs. The sense of awe on the faces of Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm is brilliantly acted. Grant and Sattler have studied dinosaurs in the prehistoric age for so long, and here they are, seeing the real things for the first time. There's also John Hammond's excitement as he shows the dinos off. This was also a scene that showcased the incredible possibilities that computer-generated effects had to offer. While there were films like Terminator 2 and The Abyss that used CGI prior, Jurassic Park took it to another level to depict these creatures who had not walked the earth for 65 million years. There's also a reason the dialogue is etched into many people's minds. It's such a simple scene, but it strangely gets me quite emotional whenever I watch it. Jamie looking at the airplanes in Empire of the Sun. One of Spielberg's more underrated films, Empire of the Sun centers on a young British boy who holds a fascination with airplanes. The sequence in which he comes across a Japanese fighter plane and is amazed at the sight of it not only tells us so much about Jamie, but is also an example of Spielberg's ability to wow us with his filmmaking skills. Through this moment, Jamie briefly forgets about the situation he finds himself in, as he admires the craft that went into constructing this flying machine. Obviously, the soldiers would have shot him immediately, but Spielberg frames the scene so well that bit of dramatic license is forgiven. Alan Davio's cinematography and John Williams' score elevate the scene even more. Empire of the Sun is rarely talked about when Spielberg's filmography is brought up, but it absolutely should be, as this scene proves. The shark's first appearance in Jaws. Due to the technical problems involved with the mechanical shark, Spielberg had to keep it out of shot through most of the film, and that arguably led to a better film, as not seeing the shark added to its terror and unpredictable nature as it swims around Amity Island. However, keeping it off-screen also made the scene where he jumps out of the water all the better, mainly because on first viewing we're not expecting it. Even Chief Brody himself has a bit of a casual attitude as he cracks jokes while throwing chum in the water. And then the shark shows up and the audience shares in Brody's immediate shock and silence. Following it up with the now iconic line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," and everything about this scene clicks. At that point, this is no longer a mere fishing trip. Now the stakes are even bigger than they were before. The audience in 1975 had a fright when they saw Bruce, and that moment has not lost any of its impact since then. The arrival of the mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. One of Spielberg's most fruitful collaborations has been with composer John Williams. They became a perfect fit with the way Williams would enhance Spielberg's images with his incredible music. The scene in Close Encounters where the aliens arrive to the sound of 5 important notes is a celebration of what an amazing communicative tool music is. Audiences were used to science fiction films where aliens arrived and caused panic. Here was a scene that provided a different perspective of beings traveling from another galaxy. Roy Neary's expression of astonishment is well deserved, and it's quite the feeling when the aliens walk out of the mothership, as do the many people picked up by them over the years. It's a touching scene, and one that presents a hopeful and optimistic view of alien contact. The Falcon Chase in The Adventures of Tintin. For his first motion capture film, Spielberg felt like the toolbox had been opened, and he had been given an incredible amount of toys to play with. This was an exciting adventure, and the centerpiece of the movie comes from this scene going through a town done entirely in what appears to be one shot. The scene so brilliantly builds and builds as we follow Tintin, Snowy, and Captain Haddock, and we see this domino effect as they give chase after a falcon with important scrolls in his beak. The visual effects artists and animators at Weta Digital fill the frame with all sorts of clever sight gags, and the action is excellently put together. On top of it all is a fast-paced composition by John Williams. The film served as a loving adaptation of Hergé's comics, and this was an amazing scene that proved why Steven Spielberg was the right filmmaker to bring it to the big screen. Peter Flies Again in Hook. Spielberg directed this film at a pivotal moment in his life, when he had recently become a father and was trying to juggle that with being a filmmaker, always off making movies. That comes through in his characterization of the grown-up workaholic Peter Pan. Throughout the film, we see him trying to fly again with little success. However, it takes him remembering the joy of being a father again to cause him to lift off into the sky. This is an incredibly emotional scene, and I think the personal connection Spielberg had with the material probably played a role. Robin Williams was able to tap into that happiness as he flies over Neverland, and the visual effects team did their job of making it look believable. One of the most important elements of this scene also comes from John Williams' music. The score starts off appropriately emotional, and then gets exciting and triumphant, and it absolutely succeeds at making the heart soar. There have been many Peter Pan adaptations, but I feel this scene is the best one at showing the appeal of the boy who did not want to grow up. Ironically, in a film where he does grow up. It's a fantastic scene that shows the importance of not forgetting our childlike sense of wonder and the need to always remember the events that have made us happy. The Girl in the Red Coat in Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg completely changed his directing style in telling the story and depicting the Holocaust on screen. There are many powerful and heart-wrenching scenes in the film I could have chosen. Ultimately, I decided to go with this pivotal moment in Oskar Schindler's Ark. In the scene, Schindler's watching from high above as he sees the Nazis emptying a ghetto. In the middle of this terrible event, he spots a girl in a red coat. It's startling to the audience because the movie is in black and white, and here's a rare splash of color. The girl also stands out to Schindler, as she seems to walk about, strangely out of notice from those causing so much death and destruction. He eventually rides off, but it is this moment that plants the seeds in his head that he has the ability to prevent more people from dying. Schindler's List is one of the most important films ever made, and scenes like this that show the innocence that was tragically lost during that period is why. The Truck Chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you were to ask me what I think the greatest action scene in all of cinema is, this would definitely be my answer. Everything about this scene, where Indiana Jones chases after a Nazi truck carrying the Ark of the Covenant, just clicks. First, there's the excitement level, as the audience desperately roots for Indy to get a hold of that Hebrew artifact, being carried off by dangerous hands. Then there is the incredible choreography of the sequence, as the stunt coordinators and performers successfully jump, punch, and slide through every part of that scuffle. Spielberg, meanwhile, directs with the needed energy level, and allowing us to see all the action. Michael Kahn edited the scene perfectly, knowing exactly how to give it the needed impact. And that's not even getting into John Williams' brilliant score and the sound effects provided by Ben Burtt. Indy's iconic whip crack and punching sound, you have Ben Burtt to thank. This scene is an example of Indiana Jones' determination to make sure important pieces of history are used to inform further generations rather than used for evil. It's why he definitely stands as one of the greatest cinematic heroes. And my number one favorite Steven Spielberg scene is the flying scene in E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. I honestly could have picked any number of scenes from Spielberg's timeless classic about the bond between a boy and an alien visitor from another world. In the end, I decided to go with this one, which is an example of the incredible imagination and talents of Spielberg, as well as those of the folks who work with him. With this film, he wanted to present a child's eye view and sprinkle in the right amount of magic and peril. The scene I feel that best showcases this is when Elliot wanders off on Halloween night to help E.T. with his plan to contact his home planet. As soon as the bicycle starts flying and Elliot goes soaring, Spielberg captures the excitement that a child of that age might feel in this situation. John Williams' score is appropriately majestic and uplifting, and the special effects artist did a phenomenal job of making it look like E.T. was flying over the trees. Of course, the most unforgettable image is when we see their silhouettes in front of the moon. It's an example of not only Spielberg's imagination, but also writer Melissa Matheson's and director of photography Alan Davio's. There's a reason it then became the logo for Spielberg's production company, Amblin Entertainment. It's a beautiful sequence and one I always look forward to seeing whenever I watch E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. While these are the 10 scenes I picked, I wish I could have also included more from his 21st century movies, as Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, Munich, War of the Worlds, Ready Player One, Warhorse, The BFG, and many of his other movies released during that period also include some brilliant scenes. Now I want to know in the comments what your favorite Steven Spielberg scenes are, and also what you find appealing about his work. See you next time.